Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dan, as ever, I am the IT Geek. Welcome back to what is episode 3 of the AZ700 Designing and Implementing Microsoft Azure Network Solutions essentially study series. This is to help people who are studying towards their AZ700 networking exam. One of those people is my good friend and co-host for this series, Mohammed Sajid, aka Saj. Hi Saj.
How you doing, Shmaz?
Not bad, mate. Alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good.
Good,
Getting
good. How
there.
are you? Are you learning, mate? Are you learning? That's the important thing. Are you learning?
Can I remember? That's a better question. But yeah, I'm
Uh,
learning.
the proof will be in the pudding, mate, when it comes to your exam. So for
Oh,
those
definitely.
that don't, for those that are joining us a bit late in the series, although we're only episode 3, so it's not really late. But we're doing a bit of a twist with this series. So although Saj has been in the industry for many years, as many as me, and he's very accomplished and certified within Azure. He's not doing the AZ700 exam, so we're using this as a bit of a twist. How we've got someone doing the series with me. Obviously, I've passed it last year. I've got my renewal to do at some point as well. But Saj is preparing for it, so we're doing it a bit of a twist and the perspective of somebody who's also preparing for the exam. So it's been so far so good, I think, Saj, don't you?
Yeah, it's good. It's reinforcing my learning. So play with the demo before I do
Exactly.
the video, do the demo whilst I'm
Exactly.
doing the video. So hopefully it will help
Exactly.
me learn. Hopefully it'll help all you learn.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
So yeah, so this is episode 3. Let's get cracking with this episode. I'm hoping you know who me and Sajja are by now. We introduced ourselves at the beginning of the module. We'll reintroduce ourselves at the beginning of module 2. Um, so yes, we are just go through what we're going to talk about today. So looking at designing and implementing Microsoft Azure Network Solutions, as I mentioned, it's the AZ700. Today's episode is part 3 of the design, implement, and manage a site-to-site VPN connections sort of subtopic. So this was the 3-parter. So this is the last part. And today I'm going to talk about creating and configuring a virtual network gateway. Then I'm going to touch on diagnosing and resolving virtual network gateway connectivity issues. Much like the last episode, this is not going to be me much. You're not going to see much of me. This is going to be mainly Mohammed Sajid. And we've got 2 more demos. One is configuring the virtual network gateway, as we mentioned at the end of the last episode. Sajid is going to do that. And then we're going to look at, or Sad is going to talk about diagnosing authentication issues. It's going to give us an insight into, where can we go in the Azure portal to look at that, and just some tips around that. Because let's face it, a lot of the questions will be problem solving and diagnosing and stuff like that. So it's good to know that.
So on demo two, we look at broader look at logs, alerts, metrics, where to look out for that sort of stuff.
Exactly. Again, really useful for the exam. And throughout this series, all we're doing is following the Microsoft sort of skills matrix. If again, I can put a link in the descriptions, but we're just following that. So all these topics that we're covering, they're all from there. So we're not doing anything different from what's actually in the exam. So let's get cracking. Let's talk about creating and configuring virtual network gateways first of all. A VPN gateway sends encrypted traffic between an Azure virtual network and an on-premises location over the public internet. And that's obviously why it's quite important that it's encrypted. As I mentioned, I think in episode 1, a virtual network gateway is composed of 2 or more VMs they're automatically configured and deployed to a specific subnet that's automatically created called a gateway subnet. And obviously Saj showed us that in one of the demos from the last episode. And as I mentioned as well, that these VMs, they're virtual appliances. They're in the back end that you as a consumer don't see. They're managed and updated by Microsoft. So it's not it's part of that responsibility model is Microsoft's, not ours. When you configure a virtual network gateway, you configure the settings that specifies the gateway type, and the gateway type determines how that virtual network gateway will be used and the actions that gateway can take. For example, the gateway type VPN specifies that the type of virtual network gateway created is a VPN gateway. This distinguishes it from an express route, so that's how it differs. And that uses a different gateway type, obviously. A virtual network can have 2 virtual network gateways, 1 VPN gateway and 1 express route gateway. So that's just a little overview of VPN gateways. Again, not much to talk about. It's better to see it, and Saj is going to do that shortly. Before I do hand over to Saj, though, let's just talk about diagnosing and resolving virtual network gateway connectivity issues. So you can troubleshoot an Azure VPN gateway via the Azure portal. I've never seen it doing it through the PowerShell. I'm sure you can, but it's probably much easier. You probably see more information in the actual portal, I think, in this case. You can check whether you are using a validated VPN device, an operating system version. If that device is not validated, if it's not a validated VPN device, you might have to contact the device manufacturer to see if they have any compatibility issues, or if there's maybe an updated firmware that makes it compatible. When we talk about, compare the shared key for the on-premises VPN device to your Azure VPN to make sure those keys match, that's always a good way of checking if that's causing the issue or not. So make sure you verify that shared key. Another thing you can do is verify the VPN IP peers. So, the IP definition in the local network gateway object in Azure should match the on-premises device IP. The Azure Gateway IP definition as well, that is set on the on-premises device in the other way, should match the Azure Gateway IP. So that's always a good thing to check. Finally, check for and remove user-defined routing or UDRs or network security groups on the gateway subnet, and then test the results. If the problem is resolved, then that validates that the settings with your UDR or validates the settings in your NSG and your UDR. So these are just some little tips to look out for. Obviously, Saj is going to show us now some practical bits around both of those topics. I loved it. This is one of my favourite slides out of the whole, any slide deck I've ever done. Love it. But I will hand over to you, Saj, mate.
Everyone. So, like Shabazz mentioned, we'll do two demos. One is deploying a virtual network gateway, and then is looking at some general troubleshooting with your virtual network gateway once they've been deployed. So, if you're not deployed a virtual network gateway before, you should search virtual network gateway or virtual network gateway. It'll appear for you in the list. I already deployed one previously, so it's in the list here. Select your virtual network gateway, select create a new virtual network gateway. Your subscription will be pre-selected for you. Give your virtual network gateway a relevant name. So we've created site 1, we'll create a gateway for site 2. We deploy it in UK South. And as Shabazz mentioned in the slides earlier, you have two options, creating a site-to-site VPN or an express route. So we will cover express route in later topics. Express route is a direct connection, a private connection between Azure and your on-premises network. Shabazz also touched on policy-based static or route-based dynamic routing. Wherever possible, you want to use dynamic route-based VPN type, not policy-based. In some cases, you might need to deploy policy-based routing, but try to avoid it where possible. And Shabazz also mentioned SKUs. So if you look here, you have multiple SKUs that you can choose from. You also have different generations. Now, generation 2 isn't supported for all SKUs. So if you pick VPN Gateway 1, you only get generation 1, you don't get generation 2. So generation 2 is only supported in the later generation, and it talks about capabilities, bandwidth, throughput, number of tolls it supports, etc. For the demo, we just need a simple gateway. So we deploy VPN Gateway 1, generation 1, virtual network. Again, you need to deploy on a virtual network that you've not deployed before. So I've got one already assigned to VNet 1. We'll assign one to VNet 2. And as you can see, once you select your virtual network that you're going to use, it pre-populates a gateway subnet for you. So you defined a gateway subnet when you created your VNet in our previous demo, and it pulls that in here and it shows that here for you. You can't change this setting. Again, you need a public IP address, basic or standard. For our demo, you can get away with a basic IP address. You might want some of the additional capability for us from a standard one. And public IP address. So we're going to create a new public IP address. So we just call this site 1 gateway 1 public IP. Sure. We don't want to enable any active mode or configure BGP at this moment in time. But if you need to configure BGP or enable active mode, enable it here, configure the relevant settings, and then select next. If you're using tagging within your environment, define your tags in here, and select review and create, and you've created your virtual network gateway. Now, validation has passed. The deployment here can take 45 minutes up to an hour. It's been taking 20 minutes when I've deployed it in the last few days. So if you go back to our virtual networks, you'll see that it will eventually appear here. But like I said, you need to be a little patient with this. It will take about 20 minutes. Once it's deployed, you have various options in here. An overview of the virtual network gateway that's been deployed, the resource group it resides in, the location you put it to your subscription, the gateway type that you defined, the virtual network it resides in, the public IP address that gets assigned to it by Azure is defined in here. We get some statistics now. In here, it won't show any, unfortunately, because we're not getting any traffic over this. We're not really using this for demo purposes. And so it's been deployed a few days, but you'll get metrics in here, total tunnel ingress and egress of data. We've got no data over this at this moment in time. Standard Azure layout, activity log, IAM, tags. Then under settings, you've got your configuration. We've got your SKU. And like Shabazz mentioned, you can actually change it within the same generation. If you need to, you can dynamically change it. Active mode is disabled. Active is about HA. You can enable that, configure BGP, you can configure that from here. Connections, we don't have any connections at this moment in time. You don't have an on-site connection, but if you go to create a connection, what you can do from within here is you can define a VNet to VNet connection. So the GitHub repo that Shabazz mentioned that has detailed instructions about setting up a VNet to VNet virtual network gateway connection. You choose your first virtual network gateway, you choose your one that you want to pair to. We don't have a secondary one at this moment in time as part of this demo, which I can't show you. I will show that later on. Define your pre-shared key. So as Shabazz mentioned, whatever key you define in here, A, B, B, C, while you're troubleshooting, ensure that both sides have the same pre-shared key. If the pre-shared keys are incorrect, then this will not connect. If you're using BGP, you define that in here. The IKE protocol, IKE v2. So if you've got v1 configured, then you might have issues. So when you're doing some troubleshooting, ensure that your pre-shared keys match, your protocol versions match, and then you're good to go. From a troubleshooting point of view, yeah, we're okay, can leave that. So if you find your virtual network gateway and you navigate down to monitoring, you have various options, logs, alerts, metrics, and you have resource health. If you start with resource health, it will tell you the state of your resource, whether it is healthy, unhealthy, whether it's available, and particular issues that you're having in here. If you're having issues and you want to reset the device, you can come into reset and actually reset your virtual network gateway, and it'll reset that virtual network gateway for you. So to use logs, we'll look at this in a second. To use logs, you need to send the logs somewhere. So like a log analytics workspace. So you would need to create a log analytics workspace. So for the purpose of the demo, I already created a log analytics workspace in here. But essentially you navigate to log analytics workspace, search for it in the search bar, create your log analytics workspace, select your resource group, give it a name, give it a tag, what the region you want to put it into, and select review and create. And then you create your log analytics workspace. And then in Azure Monitor, if you navigate down to settings, diagnostic settings, it will have all your resources that you deployed within Azure. And as you can see, most of these are disabled. You can use the filters to make it easy for you. You've got lots of resources deployed. So under AZ700, we've got VPN gateway, virtual network gateway, we've got public IP address, log analytics workspace. If you select your log analytics workspace and you select add diagnostic settings, you can then select the diagnostic settings that you need to configure, or logs, gateway diagnostic logs, tunnel diagnostic logs, IKE diagnostic logs, for example. So select what you want, everything or a customer what you want, give it a name, site 1, gateway 1 logs as an example. Send it to log analytics workspace and select your log analytics workspace that you want to send the data to. Once you start using it, data will take some time to populate into the log analytics workspace, and you will get data in here. So once you've done that, select save, and you're essentially good to go with your log analytics workspace. And you've configured monitoring for monitoring of your virtual network gateway. The other thing you can do if you're having issues, so once you've got that, you'll have access to logs, you can configure alerts, you'll have metrics once you get some data. If you look at logs, you can access search logs using KQL, coastal query language, something I'm still learning at this moment in time, so I can't give you too much details about that or how to run it. But essentially what's really interesting about this is if you go to logs, what you will see is predefined queries that you can run. So if you look at alerts, diagnostics, metrics, and VPN gateway, they define predefined queries. So successful point-to-site VPN connections, failed point-to-site VPN connections. If you look at if you want to have a look at the query itself, you go load to editor, they'll show you the query. And then you can run the query and it'll give you data back if there's anything to give. So you can hit run and it'll run the query for you. So no results found because we don't have any connections established at this moment in time. So that is a great way to troubleshoot your environment. Use the built-in queries. If you're good with KQL, you can run your own custom queries. You'll have alerts. You've got access to resource health that tells you what the resource is, what state it is in at this moment in time. You can always reset it if you're having a problem. And everything is logged within your log analytics workspace, so you can search that for any issues that you have with it from monitoring. I hope that gives you some good insight on how to set up a virtual network gateway and how to get started with troubleshooting issues that you come across.
Perfect. Again, thank you very much, Saj. Two really insightful demos there, informative. Hopefully everybody makes use of those and tries to do it themselves as well. So yeah, that brings us to the end of episode 3, and that is the design, implement, and manage point to site VPN connection topic done. So that's the first 3 episodes in the bag. We're gonna move on obviously in the next episodes. I think the next ones are, we've got 3 episodes on point to site VPN, and then we've got a huge 5-episode topic around express routes. I think with the Azure express route topic, we're going to split that into two video drops. So we'll do 3 episodes in one day, and then we'll do another 2 on a different day. 5 episodes to congest in one go is a lot. But yeah, as normal, the links to our socials are in the description. The GitHub Lab link as well, so you can follow the labs with Saj. And yeah, so thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you're learning and we're helping you prepare for your AZ700 exam. Again, as always, mate, thank you very much, Saj, for your insight and informative demo.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Excellent. But everybody, please do like, please do comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Smash that subscribe button. But up until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.